Welcome to Nollywood Radio France. Your host is Cyprian Johnson. We thank Cyril Ibe for the permission to use this audio file from the Afriscope radio archives.
This is an arts edition of Afriscope. Coming up, an art exhibit in Chicago takes a reflective look at the 20th century. 2 African artists join nearly 24 other artists representing 16 countries on 5 continents. Stay with us. At the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago, 23 artists from 16 countries on 5 continents are trying to provide an answer to this. A Congolese artist and a South African artist are representing Africa. Altogether, the diverse works of these artists seem to say to us, relax, history isn't finished. Unfinished History is the title of the exhibit, which runs through April 4th. I took a tour this past week, and on today's Afriscope, our guide is
Francesco Bonami, and I'm the senior curator of the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago.
And he's joining us on Afriscope, a radio journey through global Africa with your host, Cyril Ibe. Tell us about Unfinished History.
The show Unfinished History that was originated at the Walker Art Center in Minneapolis and traveled here at the end of January, is a show that tried to reflect on the role of contemporary artists in today's history and how their personal identity intersect with the broader and more abstract concept of history at the end of a century, and how art can function and can address issues in today's culture, maintaining a visual impact and an aesthetic impact, and yet creating a way of reflecting on our contemporary society.
And this exhibit represents the works of 23 artists from 16 countries on 5 continents. How do they all unite in this particular exhibit?
Each individual artist has his own space and is represented by only one work. Each artist has one work. Actually, no, Caddy Nolan has 2 works, but they're kind of related to each other. And the connection between them is kind of a chain, a dialogue between the different works. Each, as I said at the beginning, each artist maintains his own identity, and I try to create through the work a conversation about the same theme, which is history, between the different roles that these artists are playing today in an historical context.
Tell us where to start here.
We start here with a work that actually is not part of the exhibition, but it functions as an introduction to the exhibition. It's a final sequence of the film Nostalgia by Andrei Tarkovsky, a Soviet director that died at the end of the 80s. What you can see is a man and a dog in front of a shack, a house, and the camera panoramic back, and you can see that this house, this man and this dog, are inserted in the ruins of a Romanic cathedral, Italian Romanic cathedral. The idea is, to put this at the beginning as an introduction, is to express that the artists in the exhibition are like this man within the ruins of the cathedral. The cathedral is history, and the man is our individuality, our relation with our personal memory inserted in a more vast and communal memory that we used to call history.
Okay, and where do we go next?
We go here in front of Roman Signer, Swiss artist, a monitor with work by the oldest artist in the exhibition, Roman Signer, 60 years old. What we see is a room with a bed and a man with a wool hat sleeping, hiding in the bed, and all of a sudden we start to see an helicopter flying, a small helicopter, a model, flying over his head. The work is both humorous and dramatic, and it addresses our relationship with technology. It addresses how we can live together with technology, pushing the progress to its limits without transforming progress into regression, without becoming slave of technology, without becoming totally dependent on technology, and maintaining again a personal approach to the world and a natural approach to the world.
The helicopter is flying so dangerously over his head. You think at any time there could be a crash. Is this trying to tell us anything about our relationship with technology?
Well, it gives this sense of danger. It never crashes. You always expect it crashes. And the more you look at it, and you almost have the feeling that the helicopter is becoming more and more intelligent and is kind of threatening the person in an intelligent way, which is in a way the way we relate, for example, to computer. We start to have almost a personal relationship, and we start to think that the computer is acting against us or together with us. So this is a very simple way of expressing our present situation in culture and society.
In reading about this exhibit, it struck me that one thing that the press release said is how we have put pressure on ourselves as human beings on this whole arbitrary idea of a new millennium, of a concept of time. How did we mortals come to do that to ourselves, to put such pressure on ourselves?
I think that first of all we decided that to comply with the concept, Western idea of time, and so we just comply with the idea that it's the 2000 year, but in Jewish culture it's the year 3000, in Islamic culture it's the year 600 and something, because each culture defines its own way of measuring time. But we have been able, the West have been able to give to the entire world its measurement, that is the year 2000. So we put this pressure. This year seems to really be a border that we have to cross, and probably nothing will happen. It will be another day in our life, and that just stretch the 20th century into the future. And I think that to really see the future, we have to wait a little bit longer. We have to wait another generation, and that maybe at that time that we will be in the future. As we can see today in history, we have a lot of issues that have to be solved of the past century.
And hence we have added the 2K problem to our many phobias, right?
Yeah, one of the phobias is the 2000K, the computer will collapse, the money will disappear in banks. And I think we like to torture ourselves with this kind of terrifying idea about the future. And we can be ecological, it can be technological. We kind of don't like to think about the possible future. We kind of don't like to think that a solution will be found. And so now we have the 2000K problem, and I personally don't know how to solve it, but I cannot even get obsessed with this idea because I have no solution. So if a really disaster will happen, well, I think we have to, humanity, luckily in a way, always found a way to cope with disaster. We cope with the Holocaust, we cope with Hiroshima, we cope with the tragedy that we see in the African continent, we cope with the tragedy we see now in Indonesia. I think that the human being has this enormous capacity, almost inbred cynicism that allow us to survive and move forward. And when we stay outside things, we think always that things are more unlivable than we think. But there are still people living in Bosnia and doing their own life.
Overall, how do these artists address this phobia that we have with the concept of time? Overall?
Well, as we go through the exhibition, we will start seeing how each of these artists has his own idea about sometimes not the phobia, but sometimes how to find a solution to this overall fear. For example, now here we are in Gabriele Orozco door kitchen maze. Is a series of rooms built by these Mexican artists living in New York and Mexico City, where you have a kitchen door, a maze, where you have a corridor that you can go around, or you can cross the corridor with a kitchen maze, kitchen doors, swinging kitchen doors. Orozco seems to suggest that, yes, we can go through history, through the fear of the 2000K disaster, we can go through history to specific cornerstone of history, forgetting our role in history, our personal and private role in history. And he suggests that maybe we can take a longer route and intersect with history and make a change on a personal basis. And these changes for him are this drawing made on like telephone bills, restaurant bills, airplane bills, that he did while he was traveling, and he framed them in the maze. So you go through the maze, and you see this personal kind of diary of the art, artist that is also could be our personal diary. So Gabriele Orozco's solution to this phobia of the future is let's focus on the moment of our life that appear to be irrelevant in a greater scale. And once we focus on them, we realize that they can be effective tools to make us live better and walk better toward the future, toward the concept of history that we are a part of.
You're listening to Afriscope, a radio journey through global Africa. We are taking a tour of this exhibit at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago called Unfinished History. Our tour guide is Francesco Bonami, who is the senior curator of the museum. What kinds of criteria did you use in putting these 23 artists representing 16 countries together and their works?
The idea was not to create a mapping and go to search the artist from Congo, the artist from Finland, the artist from Sweden, the artist from Korea. The idea was to think about works of art, existing also works of art sometimes, that make sense in the exhibition. And the idea was to create an equilibrium between these artists and try to address their language, their individual language, and their way to address our load of information through their point of view. Through the, for example, there is Body King Alex from Congo that created this huge model of a ghost city. He lives in Kinshasa, and actually he couldn't come to the exhibition because of the civil war that erupted in Congo, and was impossible to communicate with him. And so the criteria was not just sample a group of artists, just to create a kind of list of names, but find works that were functioning in the exhibition. At the end, independently from the name of the artist, more as visual and intellectual icons that could create a dialogue also with the public.
Well, if we may, let's take a walk to the work of the Congolese artist, since you just mentioned him.
The Congolese artist is in the main room, and it is a model of a fantastic city that Body King Gelez built.
This is it right here?
It's right here, right in front of us. It's a huge, two huge pedestals with this model of a city made with cardboard, plywood, scraps of material that he found in his way of building this city. What we see in front of us, we see a city made with many different styles, many different architectonical styles. And King Gelez, what is addressing is the way modernism arrived into the African continent, and also how the modernism affected the way to imagine the future of a post-colonial country like in Congo. And what we see is something between a nightmare and a vision, a dream and a possibility.
Well, let's talk about the nightmare first. Where do you see the nightmare as you look at this?
Well, the nightmare, I think it's just this all the style jammed together, and a city that is Art Deco of Miami, futuristic architecture, and so it's a kind of this style clashing against each other. And from our point of view, like of a modernist point of view, this style are kind of a stylistic nightmare in terms of urbanistic conception of a city.
You are listening to Nollywood Radio France. Your host is Cyprian Johnson. It's a challenge to run a free radio station like this one without money. So please support Nollywood Radio France. We need your financial support. For more information, go to our website www.nollywoodfrance.com.